Hello everyone, how are you doing today? So in today's video, we're going to talk about safety when you are staying in a Paris apartment. And this is a continuation of the series that I've been doing for a while where I give you some very practical tips on living in Paris. What prompted me were a few conversations I had with recent friends and a couple close incidents that they had. And because a lot of people are coming to Paris in the summer months, you're staying in Airbnbs, you need to know this information. That said, let's get into it. When it comes to Paris apartments, there are really only two ways to get into them. You can get in through the windows or you can get into the apartment through the doors. When it comes to the windows, one of the things that is really important is that you are told, the police tell you this. This is supposed to be common knowledge because the police say this all the time. You are never, ever, 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 ever supposed to leave your apartment with your windows open. That's even if you're just like, oh, I'm gonna run downstairs to the grocery store and come back up. You never are supposed to leave your apartment with the windows open. The reason why is that people can get onto your balconies. People can get into your windows. There is a really big French influencer. She's a big YouTuber, and a few years ago, actually, she was robbed. Her family's apartment in Paris was robbed, and the way that they got in was through the windows in her son's bedroom. So this is a really big thing. You're constantly told, do not leave the windows open for any reason. I was just walking down the street maybe a week ago, and I overheard two women having a discussion, and she was like, there was a man on our balcony this morning, and her partner was like, wait, there was a man on our balcony? And she was like, yes, there was just some random man on our balcony. People can get onto your balconies. People can get onto the Juliet balconies, even if you don't have a full one. It is really important, just you never, ever, ever should leave your windows open. My first apartment in Paris was one of the apartments on the top floor, so I was right underneath the roof. Let me tell you, it got hot in there. This is how I know how to deal with all of the normal things of Paris heat, is because of that apartment. But this heat wave, none of the solutions worked. But anyway, that apartment, it was on the top, and I had like 6 little balconies, and it was great. But even in that apartment, even my being on the top floor, I never, ever, 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 ever left a window open. I even had a neighbor who had like an issue. We thought like, you know, something had happened to her apartment because her fire alarm was going off, and this happened like maybe 3 years or so ago. And even the pompiers were really easily able to get into her apartment through the windows. When she later learned that, like when we told her, she was in complete and total shock. She was like, I can't believe, like, that's how easy it was. I was like, oh yeah, it was super easy for them to get into your apartment. So windows, if they're not properly sealed, always when you leave your house, you just make sure the windows are completely and totally sealed. Because yes, windows, easiest way for someone to get into your apartment. Now, as I noted, the second way to get into an apartment is through the door. It is not that they're generally going to kick down the door, although I did live in a building where someone did do that, okay? But generally, doors have requirements here. There are minimum requirements for thickness, for heaviness. There are minimum requirements for locking. So every door has to have what's considered like I think a 3-point locking system, which means that it has multiple ways of like the door being secured. Sometimes it's like a T-bar across the top. Sometimes it's a bar in the middle. Sometimes it's both. But the point is that the door has to have these mechanisms for locking, or literally the apartment can't be insured. Another thing about Paris apartments is they're legally required to have peepholes so that you can look through and see who's at the front door. And generally they are not, however, allowed to have like cameras. Like you can't just put a Ring camera on the front of your front door and think, okay, good. If you want to put up a Ring camera or something like that, you would have to get approval from everyone in the building and the syndicat. It's a really, really big deal. So generally that's not something you're gonna see, and it's not a solution. This is why I say that like doors have all of these requirements when it comes to just making sure the door is very secure and making it very, very hard, if not flat out darn impossible, for someone to like kick your door in. Because the doors are so secure, this means that the only way generally, usually, for someone to be able to get into your apartment through the door is by you opening the door. So there is something called a homejacking. Homejacking is when someone knocks on your front door and they say that they're with the gas company or they have a package for you. And what they do is when you open the door to, welcome them into your home or take your package, they shove the door, they shove you in it. If you're lucky, they just tie you up and put you in the bathroom. Otherwise, they shove in, they come in, and they rob you. I know somebody who was the victim of homejacking. These people, though, did not just tie him up. They really wanted to hurt him. Unfortunately, he turned out to be okay, but needless to say, that is an incredibly psychologically traumatizing experience, and it just became really hard for him to rebuild and adapt. And that fear and that trauma really kind of like took over his life in many ways. That is something you have to be so careful about. I have a friend who lives not too far from me, and just 2 or 3 weeks ago, I literally had just told her about the friend who had experienced the homejacking, and then the next week when I saw her, she said, "Oh my gosh, I came home from whatever, and there were these 2 guys in the building, and they said that they were with the gas company, and they were knocking on, I saw them knocking on a bunch of doors, and they were like, look, okay, we need to follow you to your apartment to check it out." And she said that as she started walking, up the steps, she said, I got this feeling, like this horrible sinking feeling, and I was remembering what you told me. And so I finally turned around and was like, "Oh, you know what? I'm sorry, guys. I can't do this right now. I gotta run to the grocery store." And she said she just lit out of her apartment building. I know someone else, another girl, when I first moved to Paris, she had 2 guys knock on her front door, say they were with the gas company. They came into her apartment. They were looking around. She said they did not go to the gas. They were just looking around the apartment all over the place. And she said 2 of her neighbors, 2 men, happened to come home, saw the guys in her apartment, made a fuss, got them out of her apartment. These are all examples of attempted homejackings, and this is how they do it. They pretend they're with the gas company, or they pretend they have a package. It's why you don't open your door. If you don't have, if it's the gas company, they will send you a letter in advance, and they will call you many, many times before they will show up. They will not just show up at your apartment. They will make an appointment with you so that you're able to be prepared. If someone knocks on your door and says they have a package, I don't open my door. I say, "Thank you so much," drop it on the front door. Better yet, if they call me, I say, "I'm gonna come downstairs and get it." I don't even like for them to get up to my apartment. I don't want anyone on my floor. I don't want anyone on my front door, because I am not opening the door for you. I have to know you. There's some package delivery guys I know, but even still, it's like, I'll just meet you downstairs. If they're like, "Oh, what floor are you on?" Don't worry, I'll come right down. I'll be right down. You just don't open your front door for anyone, for any reason, ever. You have them drop the package, you watch them in the peephole, you watch them get on the elevator, you watch the elevator go all the way down, and then you stand there, you watch a little bit longer, and then only after you're certain there's nobody else there, then do you open your door. It's also why I do not let people piggyback on entry into the building. I look to see who people are, I talk to them, I know all my neighbors, I know everybody who lives in the building, because again, you don't want people just you don't want to let people into your building. This is how people get in, is they say they're with the gas company, or they say something and people just leave the door open because they don't want to be, seen as like a bad person. No, I'm going to ask you 50,000 questions as to why you are in this building if I have never seen you before. I need to know. Are you a neighbor? Are you a voisine? Because if you are, good, I need to know that. Now, another safety mechanism that you have to be really careful of, and this frankly applies to both renters and then also those of you who go and stay in an Airbnb. I would say this is probably more likely to happen in an Airbnb, but it can also happen if you are renting. And that is robbery by your landlord. So I know someone who unfortunately lives in Paris, renting from a French person. Her neighbor robbed her. Landlords are legally not allowed to enter your apartment. It's not like in the US where maintenance can come in if you're not there, they give notice. Your apartment is considered your home, so they cannot enter it for any reason without your permission and a ton of advance notice, etc., etc. It's a really, really big deal that the landlord is coming into your apartment. Your landlord shouldn't even have a key to your apartment. I believe, don't quote me, but I believe you can even change the locks in your own apartment to like the barrels to ensure that your landlord like doesn't have a key, because your landlord is not legally allowed to have a key to your apartment. I would say that there are more shady landlords than there are not shady landlords, and at least in Paris. So I think it's something you have to be very, very mindful of. There are a lot of landlords where their apartments do not comply with the law. The doors don't comply with the law. The windows don't comply with the law. So you kind of have to make a fuss if you recognize these things and insist like the landlord like fix them, because generally they don't want to have to spend that money otherwise. Robbing by landlord, just like it's a risk if you're renting, but I would say it's a lower risk. It's still a risk though. It's a huge, huge risk though if you are renting an Airbnb. The simple reason is because you're not a tenant. So the landlord can have a key to the apartment. And a lot of times you'll see like the landlords will put like the cameras outside of the apartment. Again, as I already noted, to have any sort of camera in the hallway, like France is really big on privacy. So to do anything like that, it does require like actual approval from the syndicat and all the other neighbors. There's a good chance like your landlord did not get that approval. Like maybe they got it from like the neighbor who's closest to them, but didn't get it from anybody else. So it's entirely possible that like they could have a camera there, and that camera is mainly to see when you come and go. That should again send off like warning flags in your head. And I have seen and heard stories about them entering people's Airbnbs and robbing people. I've seen a couple videos on YouTube of people getting robbed in the Airbnbs as they're staying in Paris. The people who are robbing them are their landlords, are the landlords, are the owners of that place. Like that's how they're being robbed. Plain and simply, right? Like the owner is gonna pretend like they don't know anything, but they may not have physically done it, but they definitely like were somehow involved, because how else did that person get into because based on everything I've just told you about the door, right? How else did that person generally get in? Unless the door is just crap and somebody was able to kick it down and they know that that's an Airbnb rental and they've been watching it. And so, you know, they just managed to like, they know the door's whack and they know the door's cheap and they know that the landlord didn't invest in it. And so they kick it down. But generally, that's not how somebody's getting into a Paris apartment. And so you have to be very mindful if you're staying in an Airbnb. You know, you wanna, if there's a camera, like that should make you wonder, like, why do you have that camera? Why are you watching my coming and going? Another thing is just like generally with Airbnbs, anything nice that you have, first and foremost, don't bring any nice jewelry. Like, don't do it, period, not worth it. In addition to that, don't bring a bunch of money. Like, there are ATMs in France, you know, like get a Weiss card and take money out of the ATM when you get here, like certain amounts per day, like small amounts, never have more than like 50 euros on you. But then also, if you have anything of value, let's say like a camera, you know, anything like that, you know, take that with you when you leave during the day. Don't bring your laptop. Just don't have a lot of really expensive stuff if you're going to be staying and traveling in Paris. It's just not worth it. I'm sure that most of the people you'll encounter are probably nice and lovely, but there are a lot of people who are shady, right? And so they know that you're a tourist. Particularly, there's, you know, this real firm perception of the rich American, and so yeah, they will come and they will rob you, and then you'll be dealing with the police, and the police are going to be like, well, we can't really do anything for you because, you know, you don't live here and we can't track it. Like literally the police will be like, oh, you're physically okay? Nobody physically hurt you? All right, good. Have a lovely day. So these are some of the things that you really want to keep in mind when it comes to Paris apartment safety. One of the last things I will note is that I think also for me, particularly because I come from the US, I probably have a different concept of safety than maybe a Parisian does. So to me, I think France is safe. Like Paris is safe. I walk around down dark alleys at random hours of the night and I literally don't worry about it. I don't ever think about it. So to me, Paris is safe. But what I do know just from tons and tons of personal experience is that you do have to make sure your apartment is secure. One of the big periods where there is a big pickup and home invasions, homejackings, this sort of thing, robberies, is during August, during the vacation season. So during July, end of July, beginning of August, they know that people are like gone and people are on vacation. And so as a result, that's when you see kind of like an uptick in that sort of activity. So it's really important to be vigilant, not just for yourself, but also for your neighbors. This is why I think this is something that's important to talk about. I'm not trying to scare anybody. It's not meant to scare anybody, okay? I think Paris actually is incredibly safe. As I just said, I think it's incredibly safe. The purpose of this is really to give you and arm you with knowledge so that you can be prepared if you are planning to move here, but also be prepared if you happen to be staying in like an Airbnb rental during your trip to Paris. With that said, there you have it. I hope that you have enjoyed this video and getting to know a little bit about how you can stay safe in a Parisian apartment. Feel free to let me know if you have any other questions. Take care, stay safe, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye!